Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome to RCI Monday's new championship, the Deutschland Masters. As the name suggests, we are allowing use of only German manufacturers from the main marques of Audi, BMW, Mercedes, and Porsche. Tonight, as you can see, we're of course bringing you round two from a dark and chilly Hungaroring, which will be ideal for the Pirelli tyres. Or last week at Misano, the hot temperatures really played into factor for those that didn't take tyres in their mandatory stop. I'm your lead commentator for tonight, John Dalton, and alongside me is the legendary Jesse Lee. And as always on a Monday, Stewie Harmon behind the cameras, and of course a big hello to all our live stewards in the box tonight. Welcome. Jesse has stepped out of the comms box for a little bit. Let's just give you a quick rundown of the last time out at Misano. We saw a dominating performance from this man here, Italian Dario Barzaghi, with pace in the Porsche that the BMW, Mercedes, and Audi marques could just not match. However, super competitive battles up and down the field last time, but more on the standings later as we ride on board here with our provisional championship leader, Dario Barzaghi, down into turn one of Hungaroring. Typically very big braking zone, very hard on the brakes. Porsche is going to be very strong here. Look for a lot of moves up the inside into turn one. Got to get a good exit. It's quite a long run down into turn two. Very awkward corner. You kind of got to hit the apex nice and early here, let it run a little bit wide, and then kind of tuck it back in again, get it over to the left hand side for what is of course turn three. Notoriously tricky to try and get flat out. If you make a slight mistake, big lift can cause you some time loss up the hill towards turn four. Very blind apex, normally a cone on the inside there. Not sure how long that will last in the race. And quickly switch back to turn five. Long sweeping right-hander, very similar to turn two, almost a double apexer, letting it run very wide indeed. Now the tricky turn six and seven, chicane very tight. Normally see a lot of cars jumping over the sausage, nice and tidy there for Barzaghi, and into turn eight, and then predominantly very quickly into turn nine. Sector three, very hard on the tires, a lot of switchback corners, a lot of steering input needed into 10 and into 11. Be very careful on the exit of 11, although there's a lot of space out there. Track limits are very tight indeed, and it can catch you out entirely. Big braking zone again down into turn 12, another good passing place, and of course into 13. If you can get alongside out of 12, very short run as Barzaghi runs himself very deep there to take almost a double apex line to try and maximize his exit towards the last corner of 14. Got to be very patient on the throttle here. Too early, you push yourself wide, and too late, you just don't carry enough speed down the start finish straight. And this man here, Barzaghi, first across the line with a 1:43.352. And of course, Andy Bourman coming behind, 1.3 seconds down. Chris Downing running a good lap there, 0.750 off of Barzaghi. Again, Downing very competitive last time out at Misano. We saw him hustling up the leaders, but unfortunately race pace just was not there after a few unfortunate incidents at the start. Although a smaller grid this time, only 16 drivers at the moment as it currently stands, with 11 minutes to go in qualifying. So track position shouldn't be an issue here in qualifying. Should have enough gap between you and your rivals as we ride on board another very dominant man from last time out, Wolf Matuszka. Just could not stitch his race together. Had unfortunate incident after unfortunate incident, and unfortunately a couple of stewards incidents as well, which dragged him back down the field. But looking to probably clear his mind and reset. We know Wolf can be super competitive in the right environment. Looking to see how far he can take it to Barzaghi here at Hungaroring. In practice, Barzaghi and Matuszka switching places for provisional first place. And in the end, Barzaghi did turn out to be the more dominant of the two. I'm not sure if Jesse Lee is back. Jesse Lee, are you here?
Oh my goodness, I am here, and what a magnificent start that was, John. Literally 5 minutes after we had the conversation of you taking the reins and doing such a great job of it. I do apologize for my tardiness in the place of Ryan Mawson here today. Didn't expect to be here. I might also sound slightly out of breath to you at least for the beginning. I've been running up and down stairs, John.
Up and downstairs towards the com box and back down to the pit lane, maybe trying to sneak some free interviews in with the drivers before they headed out. But of course, Jesse, you are the first time commentator alongside me here for Deutschland Masters. It's a very competitive field. Obviously, some big names that you probably recognize from other RCI events in here. And of course, my question to you is, who is your money on tonight?
Well, it's always interesting, isn't it, when you have something like the Deutschland Masters Championship because it brings together a lot of fantastic drivers who some of them maybe they only do night out, maybe they only do Thursdays, Fridays. You get the point. But races like this, for whatever reason, on Mondays, no matter if it's Porsche Cup or a Masters Championship, you always get this sort of meeting of minds. And a couple of drivers that really stick out to me that could go all the way, of course. Tom Shipston's all up there. I think they did very well in the first race. Dario Barzaghi, though, if I'm completely honest, might be their championship to lose. Barzaghi, just to me, seems very suited to this.
Yeah, certainly. So the Porsche has been very, very strong, especially out at Misano. It did lack legs down into sectors kind of 3 down the back straight into the final complex, but certainly here at Hungaroring, maybe being a little bit on the favourable side of the BOP. We're seeing the point 3 between Machuska and Barzaghi at the moment. We're still 8 minutes 20 of qualifying remaining. This man here on your screens at the moment, Brenham, Norwegian driver in car number 13. They say unlucky for some, but not so unlucky for Brenham. He did take a very strong result from Misano, and a driver I've not seen too much of before. Never personally ever heard of Brenham before I casted this series. However, he is certainly on my radar to watch out for. Going to be a very lethal BMW, I believe, starting from provisionally P3. I reckon he can kind of sneak his way up maybe into turn 1 if he can get the legs on the Porsche off the line. Certainly could be a very competitive driver to watch out for indeed. And obviously, Hungaroring, a very tricky circuit to pass around, Jesse.
Yeah, it certainly can be. I typically, I know some people are not a huge fan of Hockenheim, but or not Hocken, Hungaroring rather. I do really like Hungaroring as a racetrack. We have a particularly good track record here, no pun intended. It always seems to be very interesting coming down to the line. It has been difficult here. Yes, you'll see the majority of it happen into turn 1, and of course the chicane down the back straight as well. But beyond that, it is very difficult. Places to set up drivers, though. A lot of opportunity here for drive-through penalties. You're going to see that tonight because of how narrow this track is at some places, how far these drivers are willing to take it. Of course, that's the race still qualifying. Barzaghi quickest right now. No surprise to me. It'll be more surprising if anybody is able to overtake him. I mentioned Wolf Matuszka having just a huge struggle in round number 1. Found himself on the wrong side of a stewarding decision, but even before that, it had already come undone. Askew, John, does Wolf have what it takes to take down Dario?
Yeah, I would say of all the drivers on the grid today, looking at the times, Wolf is going to be one of those drivers to be watching out for, especially if you're Barzaghi in your rearview mirror and, you do qualify alongside him. You're going to be looking for that pink performance Audi slipping past in the mirror to try and set himself up into turn 1. And as we said, Jesse, tricky, notoriously hard to pass at Hungaroring. So once Machuska gets past, it's going to be very hard for Barzaghi to get back past again. And obviously, with the mandatory pit stop tonight, possibly could throw a curveball in there for strategy as well. But this man here, Brenham, has called it on that set of tyres. He drops off the jacks, possibly about to go back out again, but right on board this man here, George McDonald, a Welsh driver. Not too many of those in the RCI teams. We do see, obviously, we have, I believe, Tom Roberts, one of our staff members from Wales as well. So great to see Wales slowly getting represented and in an iconic American livery here, Jesse, the Flying Lizard livery from, I believe, about 2004 or 5, the ALMS.
Yeah, that is, of course, sort of where it originated, the Flying Lizard team, but they still exist to this day. They still race. They've raced different cars, including an Audi, but this is where it all became very famous, was absolutely spot on. ALMS, the first time I ever saw it, I believe Daytona, maybe Sebring race, so one of the two, but the chrome and red, very iconic, and of course they have the GT2 car, so it's very much circa the early 2000s at ALMS, but this car lives on today. I believe it's an Audi now, which is actually quite strange, or at least it was an Audi for a short time. It went back to Porsche, but very fond memories of that from my younger years. Love seeing it. Such a striking car. I'm evidently making a lot of puns today. Get it? Striking. Flying Lizard. Moving right along. 4.5 minutes left to qualifying. 8:10 p.m. late in the evening, changing the sight lines to an already difficult track. Barzaghi enjoys nearly half a second gap to Matushka in second place. Brenham in third place is half a second back. It's all gone well for great Porsche thus far. Raphael Huell, the very best of the rest of the Porsches in a P6. We ride on board Luke Stokes here, RT 166, picking up some time now.
Yeah, Luke Stokes, a driver again I've not really heard of much before this championship. Didn't do too well in the qualifying at Misano, but did claw his way back up the field in the race. Just pure consistency and, you know, keeping his nose out of trouble. With obviously our live stewards watching very, very closely over every inch and angle of the race. Can be very hard to, you know, push to pass essentially. You know, elbows out racing isn't really, you know, allowed here at RCI, although they do, you know, take many factors into their decision. As it looks a little bit slow coming out of the penultimate corner, sets himself up for another run. Nice wide line in to take the very late apex to nail the throttle of that AMG and get that V8 really roaring down the main straight. But this man here, Wolf Matushka, looking very good on the timing boards indeed, through the chicanes of 6 and 7, heading into the left of 8. Very nice line through there. Keep it nice and tight so you can get it back over to the left to maximize your run through 9 to give you the best kind of speed towards 10. You turn in, scrub some of the speed, and then flick it back over to the left for 11. Be very, very careful on track limits here, Jesse, as you were saying earlier. All too easy to pick up, you know, one cut here, one cut there, and before you know it, you're coming down the pit lane for a drive-through. Nice and tidy into 12. Looked like a lot of exit curve there, possibly invalidated the lap, but we will see once we get to the line. Penultimate corner of 13, trying to not use all the exit curve, sets himself up for 14. A bit of a tighter entry line in that we see most drivers take. Wolf nails the throttle for the exit, keeps it within the track limits, and Wolf Matushka crosses the line, I believe. Slight improvement there, 143.422. Still not valid though, as he has not gained on Barzaghi. I believe track limits of 12 possibly caught him out there. But this man here, George Kwiatkowski, again a driver we do see quite regularly on Mondays at RCI, and of course it did try and stick it to a lot of the drivers here last time out at Misano. Deutschland Masters, we do not have a split category, so no pro, no silver, everything all to play for in this one, and can keep it very spicy, as we do have very mixed skill levels up and down the grid. Although looking at the mid pack where Jordan Daly sits in P6 all the way down to P10, we've got a nice little cluster of cars down there, majority being Porsche and Mercedes, so could be the two marks to watch out for with a bit of rivalry today, Jesse.
Could do. And, you know, just to go back to your previous point, I didn't even consider that. I mentioned that it's very easy to get a penalty here as Kwiatkowski does jump up into 11th place at 44.552. And talking about Wolf, I don't think Wolf invalidated their last lap. I'm pretty sure they went a 10th quicker. Fortunately, they're going to need 3 more 10ths quicker to compete with Dario Barzaghi in the lead here, commanding, should I say. But to your point, I hadn't even considered that. I was talking about the race where you can get drive-throughs very here, but also keep in mind, you're not going to get a drive-through for track limits here in qualifying. But what you will do, if you go over the track limits here, it'll just invalidate and ruin your lap. No matter what Wolf Matushka does here, they will get at least one more chance at it. One more lap after this, as time has not yet expired and all flying laps will count. This looks like a little bit of a pickup for Pink Performance, and it is another 10th and a half there for Wolf Matushka. They now are within a quarter of a second for Dario out front, a 43.067. Currently the mark to beat. Wolf Matushka will take no further part. I assume they had no additional fuel. Here comes Jordan Daly for Triple R, the 197 Mercedes AMG. Down in 8th place, was as high as 6th earlier. This is going to be a big improvement up to P5. A 43.647 puts them inside the top 5, and I think they got to the line just as time expired. They'll get another crack at it if they have the fuel.
Yeah, so these guys obviously running the cars very, very light on fuel indeed. Not going to be putting a lot in, going to be putting enough in maybe for 3 to 4 laps at best. Obviously, the Pirelli tyres do take a few laps to come in. Typically, the first lap is very easy, kind of bring the tyres in. Second lap, start pushing a little bit harder. And then the third lap is where you really want to strike, where your pressures are in, your temps are in. And obviously, with very cool track temperatures today, Pirellis are going to be absolutely loving the track today with the lower temps going to keep them much more in that kind of operating window. They're going to be a lot more drivable for a lot longer periods of time as we watch one of the final cars to come around. Roskam, Belgium driver, very well done to him for regularly attending RCI times. I've just been told possibly invalidated his last lap. So Roskam, unfortunately, starting at the back end of the grid. Brenham here comes past in the number 13 car, looking quite strong on timing. Navigates around the last corner, a little dab of the brakes in the mid corner to try and get that nose of the M4 turned in as he comes up towards the line. Will Brenham improve at all? Does ever so slightly, closes the gap to Wolf Matushka, but not enough, unfortunately, to take that second position away. And this man here, Raphael Huel, in the slightly rose pig Porsche, P10 at the moment, it does improve up to P8. So we have a gaggle of Porsches in 7, 8, and 9. A mixture of BMWs, Mercedes, one Audi, and one Porsche in the top 5. Very competitive times there, Jesse. Some drivers looking very close than others, and I think it's going to be an interesting one to see today. We got a top 3 separated very narrowly margin. One small mistake here can really allow an overtake, so all to play for.
Certainly is, and also don't underestimate the rundown into turn one. There's a lot of space there. There's about as many different lines as there are cars in today's race. One of the few places on the track that is the case. Look at Wolf Matushka, the pink first sector, meaning they're the fastest of anybody. Barzaghi, of course, has the fastest second and third sector, a 43.067, good enough for a pole. But talking about some drivers having a little bit more confidence, I think that is the case if you are Brenham and Matushka at this point, knowing how close you are to each other and how far away you were at the start of this session versus how close you got at the end. Feel a little bit better, but man, that mid pack is absolutely ram packed. About 6 drivers within a tenth of a second.
Certainly some super close fights to be had up and down the grid. But for now, we're going to give you a rundown of the results of round 1. So Dario Barzaghi, our pole sitter today, takes the lead of the championship with 39 points. Now Brenham in the unlucky for some car 13 with 29 points. Andy Boardman, a regular here at RCI with 25. Chris Downing, 21. Tom Shipston, unfortunately not here with us here tonight, on 18. Paul Crampf on 15. Wolf Matushka, who sits in second place with 13 points. Going to be looking for a big improvement here at Hungaroring, hopefully. Raphael Huel with 11, John Eraser with 7, and George Kiyakowski rounds up your top 10 with 5 points. Now, moving on to page 2, regular driver to RCI, Rudy Philmonter on 4 points, Joe Tomlin on 3, George McDonald on 2, and Mikhail Nemsak, was the last of our scorers with 1 point from last round. All the drivers below have unfortunately not scored any points, but maybe Jordan Daly looking to change that one today. And of course, we round out to our final page with Nico Kumpu at the top, and Jonathan Kirk has unfortunately signed out with Gajda. So, very competitive championship at the moment. Loads of drivers within, touching distance of each other, and quite a few points to be had here, Jesse, from those that didn't score so well at Misano.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I tuned in a little bit for round number 1, and just in time to hear either you or Ryan Moss at the time talk about the lightish red or lightish pink car. I thought how funny that would be. I thought for a second that might have been a reference to Cinema series, but I realized that that wasn't the case. But that's what it does on the pin is light pink Porsche. But there's so many good drivers in this field without points. Jordan Daly not having points, that and Rudy Philmalter being outside the top 10. That's almost criminal, in my opinion. Got the likes of Kumpu and some other drivers. They're all going to get points. They will be squabbling over the middle position. So it all is to play for. But today, a standout day by Dario Barzaghi. It could be a not necessarily the nail in the coffin, but manufacturing the lid today if they're able to come through. But it's an hour race, John Dalton, and you know as well as I do, got to run all the laps and got to do all the miles, get you to the finish. Just out qualifying everybody and being quick doesn't actually get you a whole bunch of a lot. A lot of Porsches. What do you make of their progress here? Well, obviously, we have one up front. and a bunch in the midfield, they stand a chance of moving forward today.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, Porsche have always typically been that mark that have been great in the corners. Obviously, with the front end of the AMG receiving a slight balance and performance tweak last time out, and obviously the rear end of the Porsche obviously receiving a similar top speed adjustment, trying to equal itself out. It's going to be all to play for here. First race with the new BOP that I've witnessed at Hungaroring, not typically up together with the BOP here. I'm not too sure what was the fastest car pre BOP adjustments that we've just had. Obviously, the M4 has gained about 5 kilos. Being told on my ear that a Bentley was apparently the chosen car for Hungaroring. However, obviously, with our German marks, Bentley would not be here today, despite being owned by the VW Audi Group, is of course still very much a British manufacturer. As we end the grid here, we see Roscam on the right-hand side in the last of the Mad Panda Mercedes. Lights fire on. Dewey Harman, with his very fancy camera work, is of course going to spin around and wait for drivers to pull away. So while we do that, just a quick rundown of this season's calendar. So this is round 2, of course, at Hungaroring. We do head down to the south of France to Les Castellets for Paul Ricard on next week, the 19th of September. Cheshire in England becomes the penultimate round at Alton Park on the 26th of September, before heading back over to the continent for the grand finale on German soil at the Nürburgring on the 3rd of October. So still quite a lot of rounds between now and then, still quite a lot to play for, and still quite a lot of points to be had. Like you say, Jesse, a lot of drivers in the lower half of the field yet to score. Very surprisingly, Jordan Daly being one of them. So hopefully he can turn today's race around. And Wolf Matuszka not getting the haul of points he may be expected from Misano with his qualifying session. So looking back from Barzagi's rear wing of the ballless esports car, I'm going to ask you again, Jesse, who your money might be on tonight.
Well, obviously, I could serve you up a slow fastball and just take Barzaghi, but Wolf Matuszka is going to be crafty here. Wolf's been in a lot of close races around this joint against Dario in the past. In fact, if memory serves, I'm going to go ahead and take Wolf on account of they have everything to gain and almost nothing to lose with, I think, finished 7th and something like that. So they need to be on the attack tonight. And look for that down into 1. You're going to see 3, maybe, dare I say, 4 wide, much to the steward's chagrin tonight, down into the first turn. Will Wolf Matuszka be able to put their pink performance Audi in a position to capitalize on all that? And what will Dario do down into turn 1 as well? But you ask me, I'm going to take Wolf Matuszka on the win or don't win. There is no try.
Basically, Wolf either way for Jesse, and I think my money could be on Wolf as well tonight. We have seen him dominate some of the races he has entered, and obviously the Audi R8 is very quick off the line, but equally not a slowpoke is the Porsche. So it's going to be very, very close between these two down into turn 1. And like you say, Jesse, I have seen up to 4 wide into turn 1, and we all know 4 into 1 does not go. So fingers crossed and touch all of the wood that no stupid mistakes will be had into turn 1. Obviously, an hour is still a long time to race, especially around a circuit like Hungaroring, where there really isn't a straight to, relax and kind of chill and take a drink and, like have a rest on. It is all just corner after corner after corner. So these guys are going to have to be very alert, very focused for this full 1 hour race as we begin to take formation around the penultimate turn of turn 13. This man here, Dario Barzaghi, is your pole sitter. Looking back, he's got Wolf Matuszka to his right, Brennan behind him in the BMW. Get some fancy drone work from Stewie Harman as always. Maybe borrow that helicopter next time, Stewie, to get a better angle as the guys lead 2 by 2 around turn 14 towards the line. We wait for the green flag to drop. We see cars lurching slightly, trying to close that gap, trying to edge that little bit over the car next to them, heading down towards the start line, and the green flag drops here. Barzaghi with a great getaway, but Wolf Matuszka looks like he is slightly closing up on the outside. Barzaghi moves to pinch Wolf on the outside line, but the Audi does have its nose ahead. The last of the late breakers, Barzaghi there, great start from him, great defense on Wolf, but Wolf is not back by far. He is still within touching distance of Barzaghi's Porsche. Looks like a very clean get away from all the drivers into turn 1. Kudos to see that, but turn 2 is equally a pinch point. And of course, turn 3 isn't really a corner you want to be going side by side with, as we see a couple of cars there in the mid-pack side by side with the Flying Lizard Porsche of George McDonald behind him as the guys lead up to the top of the hill into turn 4, still side by side. I can't work out who that is quite from this angle, but it's George McDonald and possibly Brenham. I'm not sure down there. He looks like he's dropped quite a few places. Brenham down into P6 overall at the moment, as the guys now choke right up into the chicane of 6 and 7. Too wide there, I believe. George McDonald possibly in the Porsche getting out-edged by somebody. Luke Stokes looks like he's going to be possibly mounting an attack in the pink BWT Get Speed Mercedes from the back of the field there in P10. And all is clean, Jesse, around 2/3 of this lap. I'm very surprised to see.
Well, we got our 3 wide down into 1 in the back of the pack, but all credit to him. I think Stokes was the one in the middle of all of that. They were able to somehow manage that very tight radius corner, and they all just did a fantastic job. They thought about going 3 wide into 2, thought better of it, and they've all pretty much ended up single file. Very spirited start from Wolf Matuszka. They very nearly were able to keep Barzaghi pinned to the inside. Didn't quite have the overlap down into 1. Downing now in P3, and as you pointed out, Brenham all the way down in 6. That was Brenham who was fighting McDonald halfway around the circuit. Brenham in the 13 BMW has had a nightmare start. Nowhere near where they would have wanted to be, but the little small solace they can take is that they did not drop that position to McDonald, because for a few turns there, it looked like the 66 Porsche was going to get the better of him. Did not happen. Jordan Daly inside the top 5 for Triple R. Looking back at the melee, that is Brenham's BMW you're looking at, with McDonald, Stevenson, and the like all trailing behind. Daly opens up the gap and, dare I say, enjoys a little bit of breathing room. 1.4 out in front of him, but only a few tenths out behind. Boardman in front of Jordan Daly currently, who is trying to chase down Downing for P3. Wolf Matuszka, by the way, has not given up pursuit of Dario Barzaghi out front.
Yeah, great start from all the drivers here tonight. Very great to see some clean racing happening. Obviously, Brenham was one of the losers from the start, has gone backwards since his qualifying position, and Andy Boardman has, of course, gained along with Jordan Daly. So Boardman, one of the drivers at Misano that I was watching out for until his lap 1 incident he got tangled in, which sent him back down the grid, unfortunately, but he did claw back a lot of the places in the latter half of the race. So if Boardman can have a clean race this time, I think he could be one to to contend. He is very kind of captain consistent, I always feel, in the races. Once he gets a good kind of run under his belt, he does stick at it throughout the whole race. But a bit of Porsche on Porsche action here. See the Flying Lizard car ahead of the RPM-S car of Matt Stevens, and behind the slightly rose pig Porsche, I believe it's called, of Raphael Huell. Again, these guys in a train probably want to be maybe working together rather than attacking each other, as Stevens there kind of darts out into turn 1 to try and size up the Flying Lizard Porsche running on board here. I believe Matt Stevens and the RPMS boys have competed in the Monza 24 Hours, which RCI hosted on Saturday to Sunday on the weekend just gone. Fortunately, no broadcasting was available for that, but hearing all had a good time, and there was a few incidents involving maybe a Mercedes that the RPMS boys might have been running in that race, but nevertheless, we are here now. Matt Stevens going to be very hot and fired up probably from the Monza race, ready to get his teeth back into some racing as he looks to the back of McDonald's car. Takes a much wider line into the corner here. I believe turn 5, sorry, on that one. Takes a much wider line than McDonald ahead did. McDonald took the tighter line, and again, be very careful of the sausage as McDonald jumps over it, bottoming out the car. We see sparks flying out the back of the diffuser there as they navigate through 8 and 9. This is what we were talking about, Jesse. Typically very, very hard to find a way past your rival. We're just kind of looking at the back end of McDonald's car. We see a great run there from Stevens into 11, nearly running up the back of McDonald's Flying Lizard Porsche. And again, Jinx out to the right to try and size up a move, but unfortunately nowhere near close enough to make that stick. But looking back now from George McDonald's car, as we see Matt Stevens in front of that Porsche getting ever closer, the mouth defined by the auxiliary lights in the grille there. As we navigate round turn 14, is he going to be close enough. Not looking like a great run out of the last corner for Matt Stevens. George McDonald definitely with the legs down the straight here, but looking back to Mark Ham, a driver we've not really commented much on. Dutch driver by the looks of it, according to his flag, number 208 in the BMW M4, sits behind John. A racer gets very close on the brakes into turn one. That Audi not looking that great compared to the M4 here, but again, a racer is no stranger to pressure. Swiss driver we do see on the regular again at RCI. I feel like I'm saying we have a lot of regular drivers here at RCI, and I guess maybe that proves something, Jesse, that we are, hosting some good events here. And of course, if you guys do want to get involved at any point during the week, you can do so by heading over to racerci.com, where you can find all of our events listed in one handy format. And we do even have a calendar on the website too, if you're trying to plan your schedule around work, family relations, that kind of stuff. But back to the action at Hungaroring. Mark Ham in a bit of a stale state here behind John Aracer, not kind of getting close enough in sector 1 and 2, got very close in turn 1. The M4 maybe struggling with that added 5 kilos in the PVOP patch it did receive. And here Luke Stokes in the HRT car, I believe, not the actual Get Speed car. There are two BWT liveries in this game. One is fielded by Get Speed, one is fielded by HRT. I'm 99% sure last week in a Get Speed car, so keeping us on our toes. He looks ahead to the back of the pink Porsche. Again, very stalemate battle at the moment, although looking very racy through the penultimate corner of 13. Looking ahead to George McDonald is Matt Stevenson. Matt Stevens any closer, as we believe this is a replay, possibly of some kind. I'm not sure what we're seeing here, Jesse. Possibly a bit of a time loss from George McDonald on Stevens. Not sure why. Stevens does inch closer to the back of the Flying Lizard Porsche into turn 1, heading down towards 2. Not looking close enough to make a move at all this time. Yeah, here Jordan Daly is now catching the back of Andy Boardman, and Brenham is also going to be getting involved in this fight. So possibly a little three-way fight ahead, as George McDonald takes a lot of inside curve into 3, slows him up a lot up the hill towards 4, and this allows Stevens to get right on the back of the Flying Lizard Porsche. Stevens using all the exit curve there to try and maximize his run into 5. He's going to want to watch that very closely so he doesn't pick up any track limits in this race, Jesse. We're only 8 minutes in, and you already don't want to be picking up penalties. There's Huel in the background there, straight line to chicane. I'm not sure what happened there, but it's definitely pulled out a massive gap to Luke Stokes behind, who was closing. Speaking of closing, here is Brenham on the back of Daly, looking very racy indeed. I believe we're in the 3rd sector here. We are indeed into 11 and down towards 12. Not looking particularly close enough to make a lunge, but Brenham is going to be biding his time, probably working out where Daly is at his weakest and where he's at his strongest, if he can manipulate that BMW M4 to gain any more positions.
Well, just about 9 minutes of the race has gone. Matuszka has fallen back to a couple of tenths from where he was. That gap is continuing to widen ever so slightly, but pay attention to this. We're watching the Grease Weasel Racing 69, Andy Boardman's car, looking back at Daly. Daly is catching Boardman. Boardman was catching Downing, and it was well within a second between the 3rd and 4th place car. That is all but evaporated, nearly 2 seconds now between the 69 and the 23, but that unfortunately has brought Daly into this fight, and Brenham, who was just about a second behind Daly, now catching back up as well. Those drivers going very well, and then you've got McDonald and Stevens here who are fighting it out for P7, who have fallen off the back of the battle, happening right in front of the other two. A couple of things just to mention, to bring up. Hockenheim is a strange, or not Hockenheim, we're not at Hockenheim. I keep saying that. As much as I assume we're in Germany, we are definitely at the Hungaroring. I do apologize for that, but a couple of things about the Hungaroring that you may not be aware of. This track treats different racing cars very differently. I've seen different cars react to different kind of fuel loads. There is, of course, a mandatory stop here today, and you will have to take 1 liter of fuel. There is no 25 seconds mandatory in your pit stall. It is only 1 liter of fuel as far as I'm aware. And more than almost any other track in ACC, when you pit is very, very important here for some reason. A lot of the races we've had here in RCI, have been dictated by when someone pits. It's made very close races even closer, and it's definitely changed the complexion of several. And Brenham has decided now is the right time to make their pit. The very, very early undercut here in no man's land in sixth place had decided they had had enough of battling McDonald, and they will continue on. That's one tail of the coin. How are the cars going to handle after a certain amount of time? How are they going to handle? And of course, when you pit, those are the two big things today, John.
Yeah, certainly so. Possibly Brenham maybe fed up of looking at the back of Daly's Mercedes and thinking, you know what, I'm going to call this a day. I'm going to jump in the box. I'm going to chuck my 1 litre of fuel in. I'm going to come out dead last, and then I'm going to turn into hot lap mode hero. And he's going to drill in the lap times, and we're going to blink, and before you know it, Brenham is going to be up into the top 3 again. And we're not quite going to know how it happened, but somehow it's happened. And yeah, going to be a great comeback drive as we see some Barlas Esports fans in the chat with some Barzagi love at the moment. Great to see you guys supporting your local drivers, you know, your teammates and stuff like that. A very close-knit community sim racing, and that is what I love about this this kind of thing, Jesse. It's everybody knows everybody and everybody supports everybody.
Yeah, sim racing's a weird sort of sport because unlike where, you know, if it was tennis or even football, you typically have a little bit of admiration as Stevens is going to go up the inside here and make a very nice pass. You got to make sure you block off the next left-hander, and they've done that exceedingly well. A pass made on McDonald by Matt Stevenson, the RPMS 77 up one spot there, and that was brilliantly executed. Jordan Daly has become our second stopper of the day very early on into this race. That, I think, is also a good tactic. I liked Brenham's stop as well, was sort of nowhere really stuck in between Daly and McDonald, and it's really hard to make a pass here despite what Matt Stevens just showed you. I thought that was absolutely brilliant by them. Daly as well, who was stuck behind Boardman, who was very clearly losing time. They're going to both come out in clean air. In fact, Brenham already has done. And, oh, I just thought about this. What if they don't? Because remember, Daly and Brenham were very close. What if Daly comes out right behind or right in front of the 13, and it's not even going to be close here? The 13 is going to motor past before Daly's ever dropped the jack. Something wrong on the Triple R 197, as that was a very long pit stop.
Yeah, it was indeed. Possibly Daly there taking tyres, which was a bit strange to see, you know, 14 minutes into this race in very cool temperatures of 19 degrees air, 19 degrees track. So not exactly going to be, you know, destroyed at this point, even grained slightly. So it's a very strange move by Daly, but will it pay off? I can't imagine. I can't imagine it will, you know, versus 1 second versus 1 litre of fuel, sorry, versus taking a full set of boots is a big time loss there, Jesse, and it's quite strange why Daly's done it, but we see there Stevens ahead going very wide, sorry Jesse to cut in there, and it does allow McDonald back through, so Stevens going to have to do all that again while coming under pressure, this time from Huell in the back.
Well, I was just going to say, I wonder if that was accidental taking those tires, because I don't know if you were going to take tires, why you would come in so early into the race. As you see one of the Porsches coming in right there, Raphael Huell, I think that is. No, that's Matt Stevens. Excuse me, the low light is messing with my head. Matt Stevens, who made that brilliant pass a lap ago, has come into the pit lane. I almost assumed that was an accident taking tires by Jordan Daly there, not realizing they were selected. So easy to make that mistake. There's really no other reason for it, really, strategically. And no, I don't think that'll be a benefit.
Certainly so. Maybe we've got a few Ferrari team members infiltrating the Mercedes pit wall today for Daly, making a very strange strategy call, but who knows? Maybe it was accidental, maybe it was on purpose. We will find out in the next 45 minutes as we watch there Luke Stokes absolutely out-drag Huell down the main straight. Not sure if Huell made a mistake coming out the last corner, but Mercedes certainly had legs, was passed before the braking zone of turn 1. No defense was given from Huell at all. But this man here, Kwiatkowski, fellow Scotsman, the Scottish people in the chat, you are full number in sim racing. We don't see many Scots, we don't see many Welsh. But it's great to see everybody from all corners of the UK.
I would not say that on this one.
I don't know. Can you name me another Scottish driver?
Joe McCauley.
Okay.
for
Can
instance.
you name another?
And it doesn't matter because they'll come for you. And I have made that mistake myself. By the way, John Dalton lives at 359.
Certainly so. I'm going to just hear bagpipes and freedom being screamed outside my
I
window
I would
in
stop
approximately
talking
10
right
minutes.
now. You are aware Joe McCauley knows who you are, right?
He does. He does. He does. I hope Joe is watching tonight. I've not seen him pipe up in chat at the Scottish comments, so who knows? As we see more Barzaghi love in the chat.
Did you just say pipe up?
Pipe
Really?
up, yeah. No pun intended there.
Okay.
As back to the racing here, Mark Ham works his way up into P10, chasing down the back of John Eraser's Audis. We have another pitter. Speaking of Scotsman, George Kwiatkowski has decided to dive in. Wants no doings with any battles on track at the moment. Wants to find himself some clean air as he is inching his way down pit lane on track map. As I believe Brenham is coming steaming down in the M4 and does get past him while Kwiatkowski is in the box. He must have a one of the very last boxes in the pits, and Wolf Matushka here in P2 is still chasing the back of Barzaghi. Has not given up at all, Jesse. Still within 0.569 a second. You know, one mistake from Barzaghi, and that is Wolf Matushka going through.
Well, that's exactly what I was that's why I took Wolf Matushka when you asked me who I thought could win this race, because I've seen him do that here before in this very car. It's a car he knows very well, and he's won races here as Wolf Matushka. He's come oh so close. I've seen him come through the field before. I think I've seen him backwards in turn 1 and still somehow pull off a top 5 in a 1-hour race before. He knows this place, and it seems to suit him, his driving style, and his race car. And it's not really widened out, has it really? It was as little as 3/10 early in the race, but it's never been more than just about a second, and it's definitely been here for the past 15 minutes, right in that wheelhouse of 3/4 of a second, give or take, of course. And of course, they have left Downing in 3rd place, who finds himself all alone after what you could almost argue it was an early battle with Boardman. Boardman was there and then has since fallen off. Folks, you remember earlier when I said that this is a racetrack where the dynamic and how the car handles completely changes throughout a course of a run? You're seeing that. Andy Boardman's BMW fired off something fierce and immediately had fallen off a little bit. And I think you've seen that through some of the other cars. Just an update on Jordan Daly. Another thing our broadcaster Stewie has brought up, it was enough time to take tires, but what it might have been was a lot of refueling. Daly might have incredibly short-filled his car trying to get a jump on the start and had to add a lot of extra fuel, where Brenham might have filled it halfway and not had to take nearly as much fuel, and we might be confusing it for a tire stop. We don't have data for it to be a tire stop, but normally we're trained, John, you would know, we're trained to know if it's an X amount of time, we assume it's tires, but it is possible that Daly underfueled the car so much that he spoofed his stop for us and made us think it was tires, and it was really just a really long fuel stop.
Yeah, it's a great point to raise there, Jesse. It's not something that's really crossed my mind. I mean, typically as a driver, I tend to kind of go 50-50, so I'll fuel myself enough for maybe 30, 35 minutes at a push, come in, drop the remainder, 20, 25 minutes of fuel left in, and then go again. But I've never thought to do it the other way around, where you short fuel yourself to try and jump your opposition to get some track space, then pull yourself in, fuel yourself a ton for essentially 40 minutes plus, then come out and clean air, and then just pound on until the end. It's maybe a strategy I might try in my next race as a mandatory stop. It's definitely a bit of a curveball there on that one.
What we can tell you from the stop, Brenham was in on lap 5. They ran their pit stop was basically a 44-second stop. It was 43.99 repeating, and Jordan Daly came in and was just about 10 seconds longer. We assume that had something to do with tires, and it was a 54.4. But since then, the plot thickens because Matt Stevenson's pit stop was a 58.8, and even stranger than that, George Kwiatkowski came in on the very next lap and did a 1 minute 14.997 basically a 1 minute 15 stop in the pit lane. That's absolutely incredible. I wonder what's going on in the pit lane. Normally, by this point, we see some symmetry in the pit lane. Is it possible that there are 4 or 5 different drivers doing completely different strategies who are all still pitting very early on in this race?
Yeah, it's a great thing about the kind of 1 liter of fuel mandatory stops. It does leave it completely open on what you do. You know, even if you fuel for the whole race at the start, you still have to come in and do that 1 liter. So why have your car heavy all race when you could, you know, half and half it? It does really kind of blow out the strategy window. And like you say, Jesse, typically there is some kind of pattern emerging with, you know, drivers that come in. You see a few of them do a similar stop, and then they all come out and you think, oh, you know, they're all within a couple of seconds of each other. But it's very peculiar here tonight. And like you say, Jesse, maybe people are thinking the same as you, with the dynamics of the car and the fuel load at Hungaroring playing a very crucial part in their race time.
I have seen some Porsche drivers do some very crazy things. There was a time, and I'm not sure this is still the case, but there definitely was a time in ACC where the Porsche would have a violent mood swing 3/4 of the way, halfway through, 3/4 of the way through a fuel stint, and it would change how that car handled so drastically. It was like you're driving a different car. And a lot of people that would drive the Porsche would pit accordingly to either keep that from happening in a 1 hour race, or they would set up the car to be good at one end of the racetrack, or one end of the race rather, which typically you would try to be good at the end of the race. You'd struggle through the first 15-20 minutes or so. I'm not sure that it's still like that these days, or maybe it isn't that pronounced, but I do recall that being a big thing around here about a year or so ago. By the way, I do have the solution for the mystery of why Daly was so far off Brenham's time. 2 cars that came in very close to each other. Jordan Daly's ignition stuck on, and they did not service the car. So that's the extra 10 seconds. There's no strategy there. Just the ignition did not turn off of that 197.
Very peculiar. Not had that personally happen to me in ACC, but you know, everything does happen now and again to everyone. So very, very strange on that one, but does explain the lengthy stop for Jordan Daly's Mercedes. As back to the front, Barzaghi here still under pressure from Wolf Matuszka. He has not given up at all in that pink performance Mercedes, and a big gain last time through Sector 3. We know Wolf is very good in Sector 3. We know Barzaghi is good in 1, and Barzaghi going very defensive on Wolf there, leaving the door open on the exit for the undercut. Wolf is going to go for it. I can't work out if the lights are flashing or the game is bugging, but they are side by side down into turn 2, Jesse. This could be the move for the race, as Barzaghi goes very late on the brakes and does allow Wolf up the inside. But of course, the outside becomes the inside for 3, but Barzaghi was just not alongside enough to make it awkward for Wolf to go around the outside, and Wolf Matuszka to the lead, Jesse.
I'm not even surprised. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to pretend I'm surprised for the broadcast, but I'm not. That is atypical for Hungaroring. This is just the way this track races, and you'll see after the pit stop it might swing the other way. Barzaghi might have a little bit of an advantage as well. I wouldn't count it out as a potential strike, but I will say this is an upset for Barzaghi, who was cruising here in qualifying, cruising here in the early part of the race, had about a second or so lead, but has been ran down in the most recent laps. And it wasn't like Matuszka was coming and coming. That happened over the span of 1 lap, and now look at this. Dario Barzaghi's car, the Team Ballas Esports car, is struggling just a little bit, but keeping up here through Sector 3. I wonder if maybe it was just 1 bad lap, but around here, that's all it takes. You said it best early. All you have to do is make a tiny mistake around this racetrack, and you lose a ton of time. That might have been what happened to Dario there, but now finds themselves in the chasing spot. Is it possible that the Team Ballas Esport Porsche can chase down the Audi on the straight? I don't think it's going to happen. Look at that 25 go.
Yeah, certainly so. The Audi R8, very good in a straight line. Has always been a bit of a sleek rocket ship when it comes to aerodynamics. But speaking earlier, Jesse, qualifying, I believe Wolf was very strong in Sector 1 and Barzaghi was stronger in 2 and 3. So not surprising really to see Wolf make his move in Sector 1, obviously being very, very good through there indeed. The angle of the switchback on that Audi runs very wide, even out of 2, but then still manages to bring it back across to the left for 3. Absolutely amazing move from Wolf, and I wouldn't expect anything less of him. But Barzaghi is going to have to keep on his rear end here. Hopefully the Porsche balance has not changed, like you say, Jesse, about 3/4 through the race like it always does. Maybe Barzaghi set his car up to be very strong from the get-go, but maybe it tails off towards the end of the stint. Might see Barzaghi pitting in the next 4 minutes, maybe to chuck a load more fuel over the front axle of that Porsche to bring it back in line and maybe try and claim his P1 back. Grim Lilith is waving at me through the steward's window with a piece of paper in their hand. He's sliding it across the desk to me, and we do have a few incidents from lap 1 and 2 and 5, despite how clean we thought it was, Jesse. So, lap 1, turn 1, involving the 699 and the 95. I believe John Eraser on that one, and Tomlin. No further action, is a minor contact racing incident. Lap 1, turn 3, involving the 197 and the 23. So that is Gordon Daly and Chris Downing. A bit of Mercedes friendly fire action there. Racing incident, minor contact, no further action on that one. Lap 2, turn 3, involving the 202 and the 208. So the BMW of Mark Ham and the Audi R8 of George Kierkowski. We're watching a few replays here while I rattle off this stewards list. Lap 5, turn 8, involving the 21 and the 166. We have a warning for car 166, who hit the rear of car 21. So Huell is in the pits at the moment, possibly maybe taking some repairs. But the 166 of Luke Stokes didn't really seem too affected when we did see him earlier making passes up and down the grid. And finally, another late one has been thrown across to me. An incident on lap 14, turn 3, involving the 8 and the 25 is deemed a racing incident with minor contact. So Stewart's being very lenient here with a warning and no further action. Very surprising, Jesse. Normally we see the smite of the steward's hammer crash down, especially on, rear end contact.
Well, Dalton, sorry, I confused two of you because you both have D last names, and that is confusing to my all-American brain. But John Dalton going for the bingo card of making enemies here today. This, for one, want to say that the stewards do a lovely job, a high-pressure situation, and they only give out penalties when they absolutely need to. John, you'll learn this the hard way. By the way, John Dalton drives a green Saxo, parked in the parking lot. Just saying that for the stewards. Moving right along, Barzaghi has been overtaken for the lead, that much you know. But he's not really fallen off the back of Wolf Matushka in any way, shape, or form. He's right there, and that's exactly what he needs to do. Barzaghi, that is, because Wolf's going to try and drive away at this point. He hasn't quite been able to do that. Still within a second. Kierkowski here, running last in the race, had that incredibly long pit stop, as we said earlier, a 1 minute 15 second stop thereabouts. Well, they have already caught Ham for not last, 15th place. How is the rest of the field doing? Raphael Huell obviously came in for their pit stop in the 21. They find themselves second of the cars that have pitted. Brenham, who was the first car to pit, has already caught the back of Roscombe in the 96 Mercedes, and in fact just went by them for 10th place. That is boding very well for the 13. With the undercut pit stop, it all works out very nicely. John, earlier we mentioned privately to each other, you're experiencing inclement weather at your residence. I'm doing the very same. Hope and pray that nothing goes wrong through the final 30 minutes. Otherwise, you'll be hearing the soothing tones of Mr. Heilman by himself for the final bit of this race.
Yeah, certainly so, Jesse. A yellow weather warning in the UK, which is kind of a little bit serious for thunder. So yeah, if we do have power cuts and technical difficulties, put my teeth back in, it will fall, unfortunately, on Stewie to do cameras and comms. So fingers and toes crossed that doesn't happen, as the racing here tonight has been very exciting indeed. And of course, if you do want to get involved, we do have something for everyone here at RCI. Obviously, on Mondays, we have the Deutschland Masters, as you are watching on your screens right now. Tuesday this week, we find ourselves in Suzuka for round 5 of the APAC Piston Cup. Commanding lead from Andrew O'Hara in Pro and Ben Floyd in Silver, but still all to play for beneath them. Wednesday is a night for our rookies to find their feet, where they're heading down to South Africa this week for round 5 at Kyalami. On Thursdays, we give GT4s the stage. with the final round appearing at Donington Park in the UK. A dominating lead in Pro from Steel Vason. However, silver is all to play for between Don Eraser, Raphael Huell, and Jordan Daly. Three drivers you, of course, see in the Monday Championship as well. And Fridays, we are finding ourselves again in South Africa with the GT3 Challenge, in which George Boothby takes a massive points lead from Hugo Merles, but still all to play for there. And of course, this week, Saturday, kicks off Night Owl Season 11, a championship that has proven very popular with a lot of our community. Sign-ups and pre-qualifying are still open until September 9th, 23:59 hours. If you do want to jump in and get involved in any of that, particularly Night Owl, I believe is a very popular championship among the community at RCI. You can, of course, head over to racerci.com to sign up and qualify yourself for that. But back to tonight's action. We see Barzaghi is still not giving up on the back of Wolf, Jesse. 0.484 separates these two, and I'm pretty sure it's getting a lot closer in Sector 3.
Huge respect to Dario here. Lost the lead. He just had a moment there on that lap. I thought maybe the pace differential was increasing just a little bit, but that certainly hasn't been the case. So maybe just a bad lap for the Team Ballas Esport car. But beyond that, has been on the back of Wolf Matuszka. This could be a situation where, for Dario, maybe you come in one lap earlier than you were expecting to do, simply to do the undercut and try to get in front of Wolf. With this kind of close racing, that it's very much an option you have on the cards. Dario has done a fantastic job chasing the lead here after losing it. I did not expect this, but loving what I'm seeing as Stokes has brought the 166 Mercedes into the pit lane. That will be another car from our top 10 in, and let's see where they come out in relation to Brenham. Brenham should be in front of that car, but you never can tell a race like this. The lights going out this evening. The moon should be out at somewhere, and the stars shining. No inclement weather here at Hungaroring, but this is again an incredibly long stop, this time for the HRT Mercedes of Luke Stokes.
I believe possibly, Jesse, looking back at the stewards incidents, maybe for lap 5, turn 8, involving the 21 and the 166. 166, of course, found the back end of the 21, so possibly some minor splitter damage, front bumper damage, maybe looking at getting that changed for the later half of the race, possibly suffering with a little bit of chronic understeer towards the end of the stint, and wants to get that fixed as he comes off pit limiter. High beam fog lights ablaze. See nobody behind him really. Just see a pair of headlights creeping over the horizon in the back of the 208 of Mark Ham. However, these guys here still going ham at each other, as we see Barzaghi is right up the back of Matuszka, trying to get as much of a slipstream as he can down into turn 1, but the Audi R8 is just too slippery in a straight line. We see even in the slipstream, Wolf is still pulling out a gap. And looking to the scoreboard, see the number 21 of Huell with a drive-through penalty, Jesse.
Yeah, certainly do, and we don't have a steward's report here. Grim has not said anything to us, so we're forced to believe that is the dreaded drive-through for track limits. Mentioned it a couple of times today. The reason I pressed that particular point home so vividly is because it's always a problem when you come to Hungaroring, and it has yet again become an issue tonight. Raphael Huell has got himself a drive-through, unless I stand corrected at some point, for track limits. And there are a couple of places, Dalton, you know this, you've raced here as well. It is so easy to do on some of these corners. Some of these corners incredibly particular on how you take them and how wide you are.
Oh, certainly so, Jesse. I was saying in qualifying, turn 11, I believe, is the one that kind of triggers me a little bit. Very easy to push too hard through, obviously, in a very fast section of the track. Push a little bit too wide, jump on the throttle a little bit too early, drag the nose wide, and before you know it, you've pinned the throttle over the curb and you've run too wide. That's a very easy place to pick it up. And of course, through 6 and 7, the chicane, very easy to, take too much curb into it and end up with a track cut, as I believe Huell did cut the chicane, I believe, on one of the opening laps, Jesse, to possibly avoid something ahead of him, and he did floor it quite hard, so possibly the first penalty might have been picked up there, and obviously it's only downhill from there as Daly keeping it nice and tight out of track limits at the top of the hill at turn 4. Looked like he hooked a little bit too much inside curb and kind of bounced the Mercedes onto a tighter line, but it's great to see auxiliary lights of these cars shining. Mercedes has had a new set of auxiliary lights added from the Spa that kind of go down the back C pillar. They look very, very good indeed. I think Daly needs to definitely pick them the next time out he takes a night race. Great to see ACC following current trends in real life with the Spa cars.
Yeah, it is lovely. We get to watch the real thing, and then you know what they say: life imitates art, and sometimes vice versa. We get what they get, right down to the electrical systems on the race cars. Speaking of, you'll recall when Daly did his pit stop earlier, he reported back to us. Strangely, mid-race, he actually texted me what went wrong on his stop while he was driving at the same time. Quite dangerous. Don't do that, folks at home. But mentioned that he had his ignition stuck on and hadn't turned it off. Even with that, his pit stop was still second or third quickest in the field thus far. He's 11th right now, but he's going to get most of those positions back. He was running inside the top 5. I don't think he'll be quite inside the top 5, but it isn't a total disaster because there have been some very slow pit stops up to this point. We do know at least one car has taken tires thus far. Will Matuszka out front, still leading this man, Dario Barzaghi, but only by just about that much, about a couple of meters. That is it. Barzaghi lost the lead about halfway into the race, but he has not given up the fight, running right behind the back of the Pink Performance 25. An excellent battle here. I am all over the place today, John. I said that there is always a close fight here, that there's drive-through penalties abound for everybody. The pit strategy is always wacky, and the cars dynamically change here more than any other racetrack. I'm perfect. I'm 4 for 4.
Yeah, you literally somebody get that phone because Jesse Lee's just called it 4 times. Somebody better pick that up.
I'll pick your lottery numbers. I'll pick your lottery numbers for you. I'm doing so good today.
I think we should try that. Maybe if you need any lottery tips, hit up Jesse Lee in the RCI Discord. He might just tell you this week's Powerball numbers, and it could make yourself a millionaire. But of course, if you do, cut RCI into it because every little helps here at RCI, and Jesse Lee needs to eat.
John, what are you doing after this night? You want to go play bingo?
If you can guess all the numbers, I'm maybe down for it. Or what else can we do?
I'll pick the cards. I
don't
know. I don't know.
How about some roulette?
I mean, I never good at that game. I'm afraid I can barely count to 21 to play blackjack. Barzaghi continuing to fight hard here. Of course, all the light that did exist in qualifying in the very start of this race completely gone. The stars out, and that adds a completely new depth of challenge in this race. Very wide entry right there by Barzaghi. A very tight one by Matuszka, it has to be said. You almost expect or wonder if that was both on purpose. Looked like Matuszka might be thinking about going down the pit lane, maybe just fading to sell Barzaghi a dummy. Doesn't come in. Surprised to see both these cars not in yet, John.
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, a while ago, the kind of meta, if you like, in 1 hour sprint races seemed to be leave it as late as you can in the pit window, then come in, take your remaining fuel, and then head back out again. Possibly what we're going to be seeing here tonight between these two. Not one of them wants to blink for pit lane. As you say, Matuszka typically takes a very tight kind of inside line into the last turn. I noticed it a lot in qualifying. It's very, very strange how early he takes the first apex, almost double apex as the corner from there on out, whereas kind of Barzaghi takes a very smooth and fluid line around the corner, takes a consistent line, and nails it for the exit as this man here, Øystein Brenham, takes another place away from, I believe that was Roskam, or Nemsak, sorry, just behind him, who's dived in the pit lane in a fellow BMW 98 Rower racing car. Another easy position gain, so Brenham is making moves, and he does have a little bit of clear air ahead of him until John Aracer, who of course is yet to pit. Tomlin ahead again, yet to pit. So everybody ahead of Brenham at this point is yet to come in, Jesse. So big moves possibly ahead for the number 13. Keep an eye out for that one.
Speaking of John Dalton, you might expect this, but I have been doing the maths, and he might, Brenham that is, might have a shot at a podium here tonight. Keep in mind, they've had just about the fastest pit stop. They've been making up positions on the racetrack. Everybody in front of him still has to come down pit lane. Depending on how it goes for Boardman and Downing, he might have a shot at a podium. Definitely a top 5. I would say a really good shout at a top 4. I would say 50-50 at taking Downing or Boardman, whomever it would be after the pit stop, for a top three. I think that undercut is working very well here thus far, especially for Brenham, who you may recall was the very first car to come down the pit lane, has done such a great job making up spots. Passed them in the pit lane, he's passed them on the racetrack, and not been held up. It's been brilliant for the 13. Look for him to make a late move here in the race. Speaking of making a move, what does Barzaghi want to do here, John? Is it just ride behind Matuszka, save a little bit of fuel? It clearly has pace in the Team Ballas Porsche, but doesn't seem to be too eager to make a move here.
Yeah, possibly maybe Barzaghi, maybe I'll play this one smart, maybe sit behind, like you say, Wolf, maybe save his fuel a little bit. He's not going to be doing any favours for the Pirelli tyres, sitting in the dirty air of that Audi, maybe just trying to make himself enough of a distraction that Wolf takes his eye off the apex, off the road ahead, and does open the door to the Ballas Esports Porsche. But again, two very good cars right here, the Pink Performance R8 and the Ballas Esports Porsche, looking very, very competitive indeed. And Jesse, going back to your point on Brenham, could you potentially make it 5 of 5 on your calls if you say he's getting a podium?
I've never been 1 for 5, let alone 5 for 5. I think I'll take 4 for 5, and we'll be good for the day. But according to my math, it is possible, based on how early he came in and how little he's been held up, to make it to a podium. What a day that'd be for Brenham. Of course, didn't quite get the qualifying, certainly didn't get the start that they wanted to have. Keep in mind, they were in 6th, right behind Daly. Of course, Daly had the issue with the stop, so that should make them 5th. And they have been making up time. They were definitely faster than the likes of McDonald and Boardman. Say the same for Downing. I haven't been tracking their lap times, but it is definitely possible. Give credit to Downing, though, by the way, quietly in 3rd place in that 23 Mercedes AMG. Has not had anybody to really race all race long, on an island all by themselves, and just maintaining pace, not doing anything more than they have to. Could be looking at a very nice podium and a very quiet evening's drive, but anything but quiet up here for the front. And we saw the lap prior, Matuszka maybe a little slow exiting the corner. What did Barzaghi do? Didn't make an aggressive move, didn't try to dive down the inside, just sort of offset and followed a little bit. I think some of that is the power of the Audi on the straights versus the Porsche. I think that is true, but I think more than that, I think Barzaghi's doing this on purpose, just sort of relaxing, hanging out in 2nd place, almost like he has a plan here.
Indeed, and as we flick back down the field, we saw Brenham there taking a place off John O'Racer. I believe I saw John O'Racer's indicator flashing on the R8 saying, I want no part of this fight at all. Onwards you go with your charge on to catch the back of Tomlin in the 95 Audi. As we see the timing there update, the Barzaghi getting very close indeed in the 2nd and 3rd sectors. That Porsche really does come alive through the middle sectors, as Matuszka does use all of that pit entry on the corner exit. It's really maximizing all the track limits, and I thought it was coming in for a minute then, Jesse.
Yeah, I did the lap prior too, John. I thought he was coming in, but no, that apparently is just his line, using all of the available space. Oh, look at this now. The gamesmanship here. Barzaghi flashing the lights. Now, is that friendly? Is that trying to distract Matuszka? I don't know, but very fun all the same. Just flashed him the one time. That was one cycle down the pit straight of, I'm still here, you know.
Could be a friendly reminder, like you say, Jesse, of, don't forget about me. Ballas Esports, right behind you. Car number 8. I'm still here, Wolf. And maybe thinking, trying to play some mind games with Wolf on the headlights. But we do see in Sector 1, Wolf does pull out a great gap on the number 8 of Barzaghi. But then in 2 and 3, does start charging back in the Porsche. So going to be interesting to see how the pit stops play out here, what these guys are going to do. If my predictions would be right, as much as Jesse's are, I would say these guys are just going to take maybe a couple of litres of fuel between them and on they go. But it depends who has fueled that little bit shorter and who is that little bit lighter at the moment? It's the only thing we can't determine up here in the comms box is what strategy these guys are running until they come down pit lane and we see their final pit stop time from pit in to pit out. Of course, a few factors at hand, such as how fast you can kill the car, how much you stop on the jacks, whether you overshoot, undershoot, whether you have to reposition your car before they can get the fuel rig in. There's a lot of mistakes to be had in the lane, and if you can practice your pit entry and your pit stops, then of course you will gain a lot of time on your rival. And I did see Wolf in the practice, I believe, coming out of the pits, doing a lap, almost like an installation lap, and then really attacking the pit lane. I saw him nearly glance the Armco at one point on the Audi R8. He was that committed to pit entry. So I think Wolf is going to be very quick in the stops today. Of course, always driving the Audi R8, so knows exactly where to position it on the marks to get that ideal stop that he needs, Jesse.
Well, one thing about Wolf that I think everybody should know that you don't usually see, we don't normally broadcast practice, but knowing Wolf sort of more personally, I know he does that almost more than anybody else. He practices pit in and out. He doesn't want to be caught out. And he had a race recently that he didn't practice it at all. And that was something he mentioned pre-race to the group was, just so you know, I didn't practice. I didn't get a chance to practice pit in and out. And nobody really batted an eye because, well, of course you don't. It's not something you typically do or most drivers do. But for Will Matuszka, it's part of his warm-up is to practice that. Normally he'll get into the practice session of the race and he'll try to hit it a couple of good times just to make sure he knows how much he can take coming into pit lane, where he needs to be on the brakes. Just like you would practice a normal lap, that's how he practices his pit stops. Jordan Daly with a drive-through penalty, almost assuredly for track limits as well, immediately in to serve that penalty. And dare I say that was through turn 11 where he picked that up. But just about a lap ago, by the way, the biggest gap just about we've seen in this race thus far out front was 1 second. But what did Dario do? Got it all back in sector 3.
The Porsche is really the car to have in the Twisties here at Hungaroring. However, down this front straightaway, Dario just has no answer at all for the speed of that Audi, and Daly has cleared his drive-through penalty on the timing board, but still remains in P10 and drops down to P11 there as Matt Stevens does go past in the 77 Porsche. But back to the fight here, not yet close enough, although Jesse just saw a few tail lights heading around turn 2 and into 3, so possibly Wolf gonna maybe try and catch the back of the traffic and then dive in last minute and maybe try and sell Barzaghi that kind of fake that he's been doing lap after lap after lap, and maybe think, you know, Wolf's doing this every lap, so this is his normal line. And then all of a sudden, pink performance in the pits, you look ahead of you, 2 cars in front of you fighting for position, and suddenly you're going to lose a lot of time.
Yeah, I think Barzaghi's on his own strategy, regardless of whatever Wolf's doing. I don't think he's going to let Wolf dictate at this point what he does, clearly, because we're 12 minutes from the finish of this race. But I 100% agree with you, John. You cannot try to fight this lap traffic in front. You have to come in before that. And if that does mean you're pitting a lap or so before when you were going to do it, so be it. You cannot afford to lose time in the lap traffic, even if they've been very accommodating as lap traffic thus far. But I don't think you can risk it here with so many cars still yet to pit. John mentioned something earlier that's very true. The meta used to be pitting as late as you could possibly go. The reason we have the pit window, RCI used to never have a pit window. It was a pit requirement, but the window wasn't set up. You could pit basically whenever you wanted. The reason the window exists is because there used to exist an issue where drivers would come in on the last lap of the race, and it would further complicate the results. So the pit window was implemented. We've used it ever since. It's been more than a year or so since we did that. But the meta still was to come in as late as you possibly could. That's somewhat gone away through the spring and summer of 2022, but it has certainly come back in this race. I'd be quite curious to hear why so many of the drivers have elected to do that here. But it is a throwback, though, pitting this late.
Yeah, maybe Jesse potentially track position being king and nobody really wanting to kind of shoehorn themselves into although, 16 cars run here today, you still don't want to get stuck behind anyone, especially at Hungaroring. If you're a lot quicker than the guy ahead, you're starting to suffer maybe with some aero wash or, such likes from following a car. You don't really want to put yourself in that position to lose that amount of time on your rival who, like, for example, Chris Downing is in complete clear air at the moment. He is in what we call the John Dalton zone in OVRC, where you're too fast for the guys behind you, but the guys ahead of you are also too fast. So you sit in this awkward middle ground where nobody really gains on you, you don't really catch anyone, and thus the John Dalton zone was born. As consistently, that seemed to be me in OVRC races, and funnily enough, some RCI events as well. It's very strange to see. Keep your eyes peeled for EWC, where we may see more John Dalton zones returning for more people. But as we turn back here to Raphael Huell, looking back to, I thought this was the Jordan Daly Mercedes, but it is. Yes, it is. I'm reading the timing board completely backwards. My British brain is not working this time of night. As we see, Barzaghi has jumped before Wolf. He has finally given up the chase of the rear end as he makes a beeline for his pit box, as this man here, Brenham, could be the spanner in the works. However, he has found himself stuck behind Tomlin's 95 Audi R8 for about 2 or 3 laps now, Jesse, and this is just hemorrhaging him time on what was a great run through clear air.
Yeah, he's not been stuck by many cars, if at all, any cars here tonight, but this is the first time, and Tomlin has not let him go as so many other cars have. But now, sweet relief as Tomlin brings the 95 Audi down pit lane for the required pit stop. Remember, the requirement is 1 liter of fuel. There is no tires required, and it is not a 25-second stationary in the pit lane, just the 1 liter of fuel required. If that is the strategy, most of the teams, though, electing to take some fuel, they probably short fueled to have a lighter car and a faster car early in the race, so they've likely had to take just a little bit more fuel, and that's why the pit times have been absolutely all over the place here tonight. But I loved that move by Barzaghi to come in, undercut Matuszka here at the end of the race, and hope that is enough, as there was almost nothing in it. 4/10 whenever the 8 Porsche came to the last timing line. It was 4/10 of a second between Wolf and the 8. And will Wolf come in this time? Yes, indeed. Wolf Matuszka in response 1 lap later, 8 minutes shy of the finish of the race. The 2 leaders have come in. Pay attention to Dario Barzaghi's number 8 Porsche. Where will they come out in this race? They're just coming through the chicane. Well, they've already come through the chicane area. Obviously, they're coming through the final couple of corners now. And how quick of a stop for the 25 will it be?
The 25 already moving on the circuit map by the looks of it, Jesse, but I don't think Wolf could have got any closer to the pit lane speed limit if he tried. Wolf is stationary in his box here. We ride on board with Barzaghi, who's going to have a lap advantage in his tyres compared to Wolf Matuszka. Look to your right as we see the pink performance Audi emerging on the right. George McDonald has managed to go through, and Wolf Matuszka sits on the inside of that apex, blocking Barzaghi from even trying to get a move on. And we resume back to how we were about 5 to 6 minutes ago, Jesse, with Barzaghi looking at the back of the pink performance Audi. However, plan in the works here, George McDonald has chosen to stay out another lap, who is of course ahead of these guys, and not by a massive margin. So the Flying Lizard may be the call here. It could be a Porsche helping a Porsche, Jesse.
That was anticlimactic, wasn't it, folks at home? I expected that to be a little more interesting than it was. Keep in mind exactly what John just said. Barzaghi's tires are a little bit more warmer than Wolf's would be. They would have cooled off. Even if he didn't change them, they would have cooled off in the pit lane. Very aggressive out of Barzaghi now. The Team Ballas Esport Porsche now knows it's time to go. There's no more tricks up the sleeves. There's no more return trips down pit lane. It's all motor now. It's all skills and it's all traction. The final 6 minutes, just gone 9 p.m. here at the Hungaroring. It is all on the line. Lap traffic up in front. That isn't actually lap traffic. That's McDonald still yet to make their pit stop in the final 6 minutes. Will they come into play here, or will they come into the pit lane? I don't know. I can tell you the 23 of Downing leading the race has still yet to make a pit stop. They did not come down pit lane this time, and it looks like McDonald will come down pit lane, releasing these 2 cars, still fighting it out for the lead. Oh my goodness, Dalton, what do you do if you're Barzaghi? Do you wait to the last lap of the race and do you make a move down into one? Do you try to outbrake him? Do you try what's the strategy here now, crew chief?
It's so tricky, so tricky being the Porsche at Hungaroring. You see the gain Barzaghi gets on the brakes into turn one on Matuszka, but Matuszka's Audi is just that little bit quicker, Jesse. It's very hard to even in the slipstream get alongside it. We know from the live timing of qualifying that Barzaghi is quicker in 2 and 3, so maybe try and distract Wolf somewhere around there to find a mistake if Wolf even makes one. You know, a fairly touch wood, commentator's curse isn't about to happen. A very good drive from Wolf, very different to what we saw at round one. This is the Wolf that I know and have raced with in the past. Just kind of never gives up, always very spirited towards the front of the field. And this helmet cam from Barzaghi was giving us a great insight into what he is seeing from the cockpit of that number 8 Barlas Esports Porsche. Wolf with a little bit of a better line through the chicane. Barzaghi looking like he's taking a little bit too much of the sausage curb there. I know we're the Deutschland Masters, but no need to smash them Bratwursts through 6 and 7 as we fire ourselves around the last sector. This is typically where Barlas Esports was a lot quicker in qualifying. However, the Porsche looking like it could be struggling with maybe dirty air or worn tires. We saw when Wolf came out, Barzaghi was desperate to make a move. He was all over the back of Wolf. He was looking left and right, trying to find any gap he could on the pink performance R8, but a big gain into the penultimate corner of 13, coming around into 14. And Jesse, what I was going to check on my live timing, but unfortunately isn't working at the moment, was how quick was Wolf Matuszka's pit stop?
I don't know, but it was just about identical. I think Wolf Matuszka was a little bit quicker, a 44.2 to a 44.8. Barzaghi was able to make up the difference on the racetrack in comparison to Wolf. Obviously, Wolf struggling on the cooler tires, and that was a big lunge down into one, and it hasn't come off for Barzaghi, as now that they are very far back, they're going to have to close that gap up. How many more chances do you reckon in the final 3 minutes you're going to get to make something work? Two cars still yet to do their mandatory stop. They've got 1 minute 35 left to get it done. Downing, the leader of the race, has yet to pit, and so is Roscom in the 7th place position. And just as I say that, the 96 does come into the pit lane. That should allow Stevens, Tomlin, and the like through. Brenham is up to P4 right now, and the question is, how quick is Downing stop? Will Brenham get a shot at P3? They're already up to P4. They should stay either there or contend for a top 3. Luke Stokes back in the field in 12th place currently, trying to take a racer spot, looking down to the inside of one, can't quite pull it off, falls back in line as to not mess up turn 1. All coming down to this, a final few moments of the race, and there's no chance the 23 has to come in, and in fact is in the pit lane this time.
The 23 certainly could not go again with only 41 seconds of the pit window left, and obviously 1 minute 30 a lap here, roughly. 1 minute 40-ish a lap here at Hungaroring, so definitely not doable as the race provisional, race leaders, did I say, come down the start-finish straight as Downing is moving in the pit lane. You can see that towards the track map on your right-hand side of the broadcast. Number 23 ever closer. I believe he's stopped for his box at the moment. And this man behind number 13, look where he is on the track map, ladies and gentlemen, alongside Downing as they exit the pit lane. And Brenham has taken Downing. Jesse, could this be your 5 for 5 that you've dreamed of?
Here's the worst thing. This is my first broadcast of the week. I've got several this week and spilling over into this weekend, and I've used all of my luck here today. Folks, I'm just guessing of where they were all going to come out. So, unfortunately, I went 5 for 5 on Monday, and I've got a week's worth of broadcasts to be wrong, not being able to do math properly. Well, the final 1 minute of the race, we're going to get one more lap, maybe, in this race. Matuszka leads Barzaghi. Barzaghi outqualified Matuszka and outran him for the first half of the race. Matuszka was able to get by Barzaghi, and it's been this close ever since. And even a pit stop can't change the two. Look at this contact here into the hairpin corner. No move being made. The lights flashing away in frustration from the Mercedes. Oh, and sideways there is John Eraser. No, that's Stokes, in fact, on Eraser. Stokes very upset. They are getting sideways. The Razor will drive away. And I'm confident we're going to get one more lap here.
Yeah, easily, I'd say, Jesse. 20 seconds still to go. Coming around the last corner, this will be one more time by with about 15 seconds on the clock as Wolf begins his final lap as the timer counts down 10, 9, and so on. But Barzaghi, look at the gap. Wolf pulls down the main straight. Just can't even get close enough. The speed of that Audi R8, absolutely insane here at the Hungaroring. Great to see a little kind of game of cat and mouse where Wolf is particularly good in sector 1. Then you see Barzaghi does close up in 2 and 3 as we saw on the timing boards in qualifying. But I don't know if this Porsche is close enough to even make a move this lap, Jesse.
Well, they're driving like the life depends on it is Barzaghi, and I'd be afraid here of getting a drive-through penalty that would be converted into a time penalty that would probably drop them off the podium. At some point, you have to wave the white flag a little bit and not get a drive-through penalty as they're flirting with it here. But if they do continue this pace, they might get one more shot. They're going to have to do it in the hairpins. That's the only passing zone left. Not quite close enough yet, but certainly have gained after the huge loss on the front straight. If they can make this work through the next couple of turns and get close enough in the hairpin, they might have a shot, but I'm afraid being about 10 to 20 meters away, they're just not close enough to get this to work. Wolf Matuszka coming back in a big way. Stokes trying to go around the outside of a Razor down into turn 1 on their final lap. Nothing doing that time either.
Yeah, battle's still very much alive up and down the field as Barzaghi makes one desperate attempt to try and get near Wolf's Audi to set himself up for the last turn, but Wolf keeping it very clean and tidy through the last lap. See Barzaghi gaining a lot in 2 and 3, being very close indeed as Wolf Matuszka comes across the line with a flash of the headlights to take the checkered flag for your round 2 winner. Closely followed by the number 8 Barlas Esports Porsche, and this man here, Ostein Brenham. What a great drive. Very first pit stopper we had here. Flash of the lights as he takes the P3, the final step of the podium. And great to see that an early pit stop can really bring you back through the field, Jesse. Chris Downing takes P4 in the Volpus SimSport Mercedes, and Andy Boardman in the 69 Greased Weasel M4 takes P5. Flash of the lights from everybody here. Great to see George McDonald in the Flying Lizard Motorsports Porsche taking P6, and Matt Stevens for the RPMS team coming around the last corner. A big gap opened up between McDonald and Stevens. We saw these guys nose to tail in the early stages of the race. Joe Tomlin for Tomlin Racing in P8 comes around the penultimate corner to take the checkered flag. And this battle here, John Eraser and Luke Stokes, has drawn its end, with the BWT Mercedes losing out to the 699 Racing of John Eraser, unfortunately. But great to see the respect between these two guys to avoid collisions. A little bit of oversteer. We see Raphael Huel, Jordan Daly, Mark Ham, George Kiyakowski, and finally Ross Kam, the Belgian driver, coming in to take P16. What a wonderful race that was, Jesse.
Yeah, and absolutely clean for the most part. No real penalties to speak of outside of track limits speaking for themselves. Wolf Matuszka, what can you say? Qualified second by 2/10. You would have been forgiven if you would have thought it was going to be Dario Barzaghi driving away, but the race and qualifying, two different things. Barzaghi did run the quickest lap of the race. That is indicative of the magenta number beside their name, so they will get bonus points for that as well. And Wolf Matuszka won the battle today. Barzaghi's winning the war in the championship. Not only is that another impressive finish, they also beat out Brenham, who, keep in mind, that's their nearest championship rival right now. Matuszka, though, is going to get a boatload of points. Might see him as high as P3 in the championship as well today. And man, what a race it was. One of the cleanest races I've ever seen here in RCI, and especially the cleanest race I've seen in quite some time. Excellent racing too.
Yeah, particularly so. We don't tend to catch these very clean races that often, but when we do, they do provide some great battles. I believe Stewart's next door squinting across the box, looking a little bit sleepy from where they've not really had to do particularly too much this race compared to last week, which was a bit of a messy one as drivers found their feet maybe in their marks that they're not quite familiar with. But Wolf Matuszka taking an overall victory from Dario Barzaghi. What a great drive between these two. Wolf made it stick through turns 1, 2, and 3, and it just went from there. Dario did not give up though. Nothing he could do on strategy and had no answer for Wolf's R8 down the pitch straight. But Brenham, the the outsider, bit of an underdog there. Pitted first, came up into from P6, dropped all the way back to the back of the field, and meandered his way up to a very good P3, take the last step of the podium. Chris Downing, a driver we saw dominate Mazzano in qualifying in the beginning of the race, but unfortunately tailed off with a very solid fourth place finish. And Andy Boardman rounding out your top 5 in the M4 GT3. Boardman slowly finding his way towards the top end of the field as well. Great to see. Maybe we'll see him on a step of a podium in the next few rounds. But of course, a quick message from our partners here at RCI. AK Informatica, for providing our server solutions at RCI. However, they also do provide high-end hardware, peripherals, and accessories, including sim gear. So if you are in their area market, then be sure to check them out. Driver61.com, you can get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code, link in the description below, and heading over to driver61.com. And finally, of course, Fanatec, your one-stop shop for the best sim racing equipment on the market. You can, of course, use our affiliate link in the description if you're looking to pick up any new gear this year towards the latter half of the end of 2022. It won't cost you a penny, but it does help us with the running costs here at RCI. So yeah, Jesse, it was a fantastic race. Great to cast with you again, just like the British Masters, that the majority of it was done alongside you. And yeah, I hope to see you in another race soon.
Absolutely the case. Always a pleasure, John. And, 4 more races left in the Deutschland Masters Championship. Still a lot of time. A lot of things can change. Matuszka trending up in the right direction. Barzaghi holding station, beating the teams and the drivers they have to beat. The big takeaway today was just the respect out of everybody, but especially the top 2. Passing back and forth between them. Very cleanly done, expertly raced. An entire race between them two within 1 second of one another. Excellent driving. It's what you want to see. And future looks bright here in the Deutschland Masters Championship. Can't wait to see what happens next week.
Yeah, certainly so. Next Monday, we do head to Zandvoort, I believe, is our next round up in Holland. Obviously, the old version, not the newly repaid version that you might have seen last week in Formula One. However, it's going to provide some very close racing, typically a very old school circuit, lots of grass, gravel, and curbs everywhere to catch these drivers out. So catch us again next week on Monday, same time, same place, 7:30 UK time. We go live here on RCI TV. From myself, John Dalton, from my co-caster, Jesse Lee, and the man behind the camera, Stewie Harmon, and of course, the stewards in the box. Farewell from us, and I hope you all have a good evening.